Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Space Ghost Daily and Friday Night Locker Room TV studios here on beautiful Merritt Island. It's a blustery, wintry day, 85 degrees yesterday, 60-something degrees today. Gotta love this Florida weather, right? Well, it's the weekend, and we're looking forward to a nice, hopefully a nice, clearer weather weekend. And we're here today to talk more about our lagoon, our most important resource here, one of the most beautiful pieces of water in the whole North American continent. And we're going to learn more about it from a really special guy who's volunteering his time to help this effort and to clean up our Indian River Lagoon. Vince Lamb, welcome to Space Ghost Daily, sir.
Thank you, John.
First of all, you're the chairman, the volunteer chairman of the Brevard Indian River Lagoon Coalition. Tell us about your background and why you've taken on this task.
Well, I've lived in Brevard County since 1970. I have lived on the lagoon since 1973. So I feel a very personal connection to it. I also have, sailed, water skied, used the lagoon, and fished, used the lagoon in lots of ways. So I'm really attached to the lagoon. I have a daughter and a grandchild that both live in this county, and it's very important to me that the lagoon, the value of the lagoon, be preserved for my daughter, my grandson, and future generations.
You're very knowledgeable about all the science behind this. What's your professional background?
I was a computer systems engineer, ran a company here that did factory automation software for a number of plant automation type projects. And I've been retired about 10 years. When I entered into retirement, I somehow or another got drawn into into advocacy for our environment and natural resources.
Well, we're glad to have you on board, Vince, that's for sure. I know I see you everywhere. I'm involved in a lot of organizations locally, but Vince, his smiling face, you see it everywhere, so it's making a big difference. We do appreciate what you're doing. So you, the voters, back in November of 2016, passed a referendum vote. 62% of you voted in favor of adding a half-cent sales tax onto our purchases here in Brevard County, and that's going to raise around $500 million over 10 years, and that money is being used to clean up the lagoon. That said, Vince, how did we get here today? I know you've got a bag of beautiful muck here. I open up the bag. Doesn't smell too bad, actually, but it's sort of like a clay, mucky texture. I won't say much more than that. But tell us about the muck, how it got there today, and what are the main contributors for it?
Well, the muck represents 50 years of adverse, bad human impacts on the lagoon. That the fertilizer runoff, the septic tanks, all the human nutrient pollution that's occurred has collected on the bottom of the lagoon in various places and formed this muck.
On that topic, if you had to sort of blame those different things that you mentioned, out of 100, what percentage would be, say, fertilizer runoff from my lawn when I go fertilize my lawn?
Fertilizer runoff, residential fertilizer runoff as a pollutant to the lagoon is about a 20% factor. So
that's a lot.
That's a lot. Atmospheric deposition is up there too at about a 20% of nitrogen that comes in from the atmosphere. We're not going to stop that one.
Right.
So.
Right. And then as far as the various other sources of this problem, septic tanks, let's talk about that one.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact percentage on septic tanks, and I think there's some debate there anyway, but clearly we have a lot of septic tanks in the lagoon. We have a lot of septic tanks that are located on, close to the lagoon or to canals or tributaries that go into the lagoon. So collectively, septic tanks rank very high. Mm-hmm. The sewage processing, two parts to the sewage processing issue. One is just the leaks in the transmission lines. It's not everything that goes from your toilet. If you're on the sewer, flush the toilet. They've been doing some great work looking for leaks and fixing them, but that's a problem. They can leak on the way to the plant. It used to be, and this is going back to as recently as the 90s, that the sewage plants were dumping their treated effluent into the lagoon, and that got stopped.
Amazing.
And that was a good thing that it got stopped.
Yes.
But anyway, now there are other issues sort of associated with that. Reclaimed water. The reclaimed water has more nutrient content than is needed, so it's another fertilizer that's going into the lagoon. So all these things are collectively going into the lagoon. The trouble we're dealing with now was first noticed in 2011 with the brown tides that the people were, it was like times a year when you could clearly expect to see the bottom in 6 feet of water, you couldn't see the bottom anymore.
Right.
So, and it wasn't very long after that we had the seagrass die off, and we had unusual mortality of dolphins and manatees and pelicans. So that was kind of the beginning of us knowing we had a problem.
Okay. So 50 years of build-up of this lovely brown muck, goo, that's now being demucked from South County to North County, I assume.
I'm not sure there's an order to it particularly. It's an order in terms of the permitting, the planning, but it's working its way through the county.
Okay. So now we're demucking the lagoon. There's some big projects going on, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. But really, obviously, that's fantastic. We're getting rid of the muck that's there.
Yes.
But if we're adding to it on a daily basis, that's really what we want to make our audience aware of, is what you can do at home to really to help solve this problem going forward. So what are some of the things? Let's first of all talk about the fertilizer. There's a ban coming in effect, isn't there?
The ban starts May 1st, but even before that, there are things like in the fertilizer ordinances, you're not supposed to fertilize within 15 feet of the lagoon if you have a waterfront property. A lot of people still do that, and so we need more compliance of people, voluntarily deciding that they don't need to fertilize at all in the 15 feet next to the lagoon. There's still people that are dumping grass clippings into the lagoon, and that needs to get stopped. Sure. The biggest thing is just there's a high amount of fertilizer that's applied to our lawns.
And so this ban that's going into effect, I understand the Brevard fertilizer ban, many of the municipalities voted on this, right? So from May 1st to November 1st, there's no fertilizing of your lawn.
Correct.
And that is everywhere in Brevard County?
That's everywhere in Brevard County.
Okay, and what if someone gets caught doing that? What are the penalties involved?
Honestly, for individuals, I don't think there is no enforcement for individuals. It's voluntary compliance for individuals. For the lawn services, I think they can lose their licenses if they're caught. If there's a lawn chemical applier that's caught applying to somebody's yard in the season, I don't know. Maybe they get a warning the first time, but
sure.
They can't get away with it. It's not voluntary for them.
Sure. Well, it's important, folks, that you tell your family, tell your neighbors, tell your friends about this fertilizer ban. May 1st through November 1st, no fertilizing of your lawn. Obviously, that's the rainy season. So if you're fertilizing during that time, the rains are washing it right into the lagoon.
That's the concern, yes.
So make sure we are aware of that one, folks. Septic systems. This is really interesting. Vince was telling me that the Florida Keys recently, I think, they just pulled out the last septic system in the whole entire Florida Keys system, right?
That's absolutely true. It took 20 years, well, most of it took a lot of fundraising before they got started with the physical work, but it was a 20-year project that cost $1 billion to get the last, to get every single septic tank out of the Keys, but they have done that.
That was $1 billion cost.
$1 billion cost. There was some of it, I think they'd used the sales tax for some of it. They used they got some state money, they got some federal money, and they all came together and they got it all out.
Well, the Florida Keys, kudos to you. You're ahead of us here in Brevard, right? We've got some work to do. I noticed there's a project, Zach's going to pull up some footage, I think, back here on Cone Road on Merritt Island. They've just gone through and they've removed all the septic on Cone Road. Is that right?
They're in process of doing that. There are a number of really great projects around the county. There was a place up Rockledge, close to the lagoon in Rockledge. Somewhere around 150 septic tanks were removed and converted to sewer there. So we keep going with that. But meanwhile, there are new septic tanks that are being permitted, and there are a lot of there are properties in Brevard County where there is no sewer line. And so we've kind of got to come to terms with that, and that's I don't believe we're ever going to have a really healthy lagoon until we have greatly reduced the lawn fertilizer and we have greatly reduced the septic system discharge.
Well, what's the answer? It's an issue, isn't it? If you're out in the middle of Canaveral Groves and there's no sewer line there, what other choice do you have besides putting a septic tank?
There is another choice, and that's advanced technology septic systems. And Brevard County passed an ordinance in 2019 that for all of the undeveloped lots that are within 50 yards of the lagoon in one place and 60 in another, it's 50 to 60 yards, that in order, they cannot have just a basic septic system anymore, which doesn't remove enough pollutants. They have to go to at least the first level of an advanced treatment septic system in their yard. Mm-hmm. So that's the law, and it's gone in, and I haven't heard any great problems. I mean, I'm sure it's a hardship on some people, but we cannot just keep letting everybody put stuff into the lagoon and then we pay large amounts of money to get it out.
Sure, that's the definition of insanity, isn't it?
Yeah. Right.
So if people want more information, if they have a piece of property they want to develop, there's no sewer out there, they want to put septic in, can they contact the helpthelagoon.org to get information on that?
They can, but actually, I think Brevard County has been gearing up. They've been wonderful on this, and I think some of the municipalities are too. So I would say that, first try if you're in the unincorporated area of the county, go to the county. If you're in a city, try your city, and if you don't get what you need there, come to us, and we will certainly try to help.
We were talking about the biggest frustration that you face in this project. Obviously, you're a volunteer. $500 million is going to be raised here, but we need more money for projects like adding additional sewer lines. What's your biggest frustration in this whole project?
Well, I think we need to get money from the state. When you look around, and in some periods we have been wonderfully successful, and we got a good bit of money from the state when Steve Crisafulli was Speaker of the House, and he helped, and he brought back some substantial funding. Mm-hmm. They're trying. The session is going on right now. Our legislators are trying their very best there are a number of bills that are out there in the Senate and the House, so they are trying to do this, but 3 more weeks of session. Contact your legislator and let your legislator know that we want to improve water quality. We want help. We need help from the state of Florida.
We want you to comment, folks. All our legislators read Space Coast Daily. They tune in. They're probably watching now. So it's important that you voice your concerns, voice your issues right here on Space Coast Daily, and we'll certainly make sure Randy Fine and those other folks get this information and they can speak to it at the state level. So I was reading on Space Coast Daily, the largest Baffle Box east of the Mississippi was just built down in Melbourne on US 1. What is a Baffle Box? I'm a little baffled by that.
Well, it's interesting. It's almost $1 million, and it's like $800,000 was the cost of this Baffle Box, and it's just a big structure where a lot of stormwater flows into it, and it particularly gets the particles out of the, we get the vegetation and the particles out. Some of them actually do some treatment to reduce the nutrients. Mm-hmm. But the most exciting thing about the Baffle Box in Melbourne to me is the cooperation that exists. Now here, this is largely funded, at least half funded by the half-cent sales tax, which is a county initiative, and this represents a great cooperation between the cities and the county. So like Melbourne and Brevard County work together on the planning and funding of that Baffle Box, mm-hmm. and and I always like it when governments play nicely and work together, and that's what's happening here.
Well, that $800,000 baffle box is being put in. What kind of area would that serve? What area are we talking about?
I can't help you on that exactly, but it's where where stormwater is being, stormwater canals are coming together, and I'm sure it's a pretty good, I'm sure it's a significant percentage of Melbourne. It might be a quarter.
We're with Vince Lamb. He's the chairman of the Broad In-River Lagoon Coalition, a volunteer, sort of a science guy, our version of the science guy in Brevard, and he's doing this because he's got a great passion for the Indian River Lagoon, like we all do. I live on Sykes Creek. I don't see as much mullet jumping as I used to. I can't hardly see the bottom of the lagoon. When are we going to see a difference here in Merritt Island?
Well, I actually think that we're seeing, I think we're seeing better now than we did 2 years ago. I think 2016 was the bottom. And sadly, I mean, we talked about the referendum, and I think the biggest reason that the referendum passed wasn't because my friends and I were out knocking on doors in our neighborhoods and were charming. It was because all those fish gave their lives, and everybody saw the pictures and the videos of dead fish everywhere. So the bottom was 2016, and right now I think we're authorized to about $150 million through the asset sales tax in terms of projects that are committed. Some of those are still in permitting and process stage, so they haven't been done. But some of this work has been done, and I think the only thing you can say for sure is that the lagoon is in better condition as a result of the referendum than it would be if we were doing nothing.
Sure. So if people want to find out about the bills that are tracking through Tallahassee, for helping to clean up the water, where is that at this point, and how can they help?
It's interesting how the system in Tallahassee is so much back room for all the sunshine that you and I live with in terms of local government committees. Everything has to be done in the sunshine. So, Tallahassee doesn't have that same requirement. So there's a lot of the most important stuff going on in Tallahassee is going on in backroom conversations. You can try. There's great. The Florida government. There's a mysenate.com and or mysenate.gov probably, and a myhouse.gov that are great websites for getting information. You can specify your senator, in my case, Debbie Mayfield, or my representative, Thad Altman, and I can go see what his bills are doing, and that's all out there. But in terms of really getting the pulse of what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks, that's hard to do.
Well, there it is, folks. We're with Vince Lamb talking about cleaning up our lagoon. You can be a big part of it yourselves by the fertilizer ban, May 1st through November 1st, I think. Making sure you don't use that fertilizer, encouraging your commercial vendors who are out spraying these lawns, spraying these shrubs, to make sure they stay away from the edge of the water. And we got to do it ourselves, folks. It's the only way it's going to make a difference. We can remove all this muck, but unless we change our habits, it's going to be difficult to prevent this from happening again, isn't it?
Yeah, and I got to put a plug in for native plants too. When you get Florida native plants, you're benefiting the butterflies that belong here, the birds, the whole wildlife feeding system. The native plants need less fertilizer. And a lot of them need no fertilizer. And so it's, that's another way to help the lagoon.
Sure. Well, there it is, folks. helpthelagoon.org. You can log on to that website. Go to the meetings. There may be another meeting coming up in April, a straight talk meeting. We want to thank Fred Mays for bringing Vince up here today and sharing some very important information. And if people want to reach out to you, Vince, to volunteer, to help, is it helpthelagoon.org? Is that the place to go?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
I'm not hard to find. I'm Vince at vincelamb.com. So
there it is, Vince at vincelamb.com.
Right. Yeah,
right. So you can write to Vince. You can thank him too.
Okay.
He's a volunteer, and as is Fred and all these other people who are really helping. I want to thank the folks who were in here before, MJ, I think it was, and all the folks at the county Virginia,
Yeah.
and all the team. We're all in this together. It's such a beautiful place we live in, and let's take care of it. For Vince Lamb, I'm Giles Malone for Space Coast Daily TV. Have a great weekend, folks.